Our first race that we're going to discuss tonight, we're actually a little ahead of schedule, so that's a good thing, is County Court at Law 1. And we would ask Brian Cain and John Hafley to come to the stage, please. And as they're coming to the stage, I'm going to talk to you about what their County Court at 1 is, the office they're seeking. It's designated as a criminal misdemeanor court. The current judge, Judge Dennis Watson, is not seeking re-election. And the candidates in this race are Brian Cain and John Hafley.
All right, we're ready to get started. Before we get started, Judge Mack just mentioned that the Honorable Judge Dennis Watson is not seeking re-election. He's sitting right here in front of me. Judge Watson, please stand. We want to thank you for your many years of service to Montgomery County. Okay, we're going to kick it off. First, the first question. We're going to alternate the order in which the questions are asked. So this first question will go to General John Hafley. The Honorable Judge Dennis Watson is retiring after serving our county admirably for almost a quarter century, since 1999, as County Court of Law Judge number 1, which is an all-criminal court. What distinguishes you from your opponent as the person best qualified to replace Judge Watson?
Clock starts now. So, thank you everyone for coming out. Brian and I do appreciate this. So the question, what distinguishes me? I'm a former police officer. I served as a police officer for 8 years, protecting the citizens of this state. I then went to law school and became a prosecutor. I prosecuted cases against criminals. This is a criminal court. I rose to the level of chief of a district court, which means I handled felonies and I was the chief. I then opened my own law firm. And I now represent individuals who are being charged with crimes. So when you ask the question, what distinguishes me? Those 3 things, the first 2 distinguish me, former police officer and former prosecutor. I also have served in the United States Army for 30 years. 8 of those years on active duty, and the remainder in the Army Reserve. I want to continue serving. I want my service to be to the people, not for me. Last year, Donald Trump nominated me, and the Senate confirmed me as a Brigadier General in the United States Army Reserve. Experience matters. The experience of having a wide variety of criminal caseload, from police officer to prosecutor, those things matter. Leadership matters. Being in charge of a court means you are going to lead people through the hardest parts of their life. You need to have leadership skills. I have been tested at every level in the United States Army, from company command, now as a division commander. So my proven leadership is within the Army is why I'm asking you to vote for me starting February 14th, and then at the primary on March 1st. Thanks.
Thank you, John. Now, Brian, same question.
Thank you to the Hispanic Conservatives for having this, hosting this this forum, and thank you to all of you for coming. What I would say distinguishes me, first of all, is in a little bit of my story. I only have 2 minutes, so briefly, before I went to law school, I spent 1.5 years mentoring to become an Episcopal priest, and then I got a master's in history, thinking that I would be a history professor. So I bring that up. I am a contemplative person. I'm someone who comes to decisions after taking a long time to get there. And I came to the decision of becoming a lawyer after a journey. And I've come to the decision to run for this office. I came to that decision, I didn't take it lightly. The other thing I think distinguishes me, this is a currently docketed criminal court, but remains a court of general jurisdiction in the government code. My firm and I do not distinguish for the kind of case that comes in the door. And I know that John has taken cases of other sorts, and we've talked about that. But I have a very substantial family docket. The very first trial I did was of a civil nature. I have represented businesses that in various capacities, and in fact in the process of winding one of them down, which is a very difficult proposition. I say all this to say, to bring up the point that I know how different areas of the law impact every person. I've had people involved in all of those sorts of cases and see how one interacts with the other. A criminal conviction leads to problems in a family court, leads to problems in a civil court, and so on and so forth. I also bring that up to say that should the needs of the county require changing what is currently docketed in County Court 1, that I'm experienced in those areas. Thank you.
Thanks for following the rules. Okay, next we're going to direct the second question to Mr. Cain. The Sixth Amendment to the United States Constitution guarantees the accused's right to a speedy trial. In addition, Article 1, Section 10 of the Texas Constitution guarantees the accused in all criminal prosecutions the right to a speedy and public trial, which is why Montgomery County and other larger counties in Texas have chosen to specialize its courts. What is your specific plan to effectively manage the docket to ensure accused citizens of Montgomery County get their right to a speedy trial? Will you be implementing any of the current practices from Judge Watson?
Well, I will say that I am in Judge Watson's court quite often. And I do see the struggles that he has and handles very well in keeping those dockets moving. You've got situations where defense attorneys like myself and the prosecutors have their own agendas as to when a case should go to trial. Defendants themselves who may benefit from a little more time or having it go quickly. You've also got witnesses who you have to work around, especially in DWIs. You get DWIs, basically the only witness of import for the state, usually, is going to be the arresting officer. And when that's the case, and that officer has a series of trainings set up, or other things that take him away from the county, it can be very difficult to get those cases moving. One of the things I hope to be able to do is to work with the state of Texas, the prosecutors, and the various law enforcement offices in this county to see about regularizing training schedules, setting DWIs maybe on a specialized docket, which could obviate the need to continually resetting DWIs down the line. This is something that obviously would take a lot of cooperation and maybe a difficult thing to get done, but it's something that I think is something that needs to be looked into. We do have problems getting cases to trial in lots of different areas. And what we've seen in County Court 4 is there's a specialized docket for family violence. And I've seen that has moved cases quickly. It does help people have their rights protected, get to trial quicker, which of course lowers docket numbers and in turn saves the county money. And I think we should look at that particular solution and apply it in other courts as well. Thank you.
General Hafley, same question. What is your specific plan to effectively manage the docket to ensure accused citizens of Montgomery County get their right to a speedy trial? Will you be implementing any of Judge Watson's procedures?
Yeah, so Judge Watson has been presiding over County Court of Law for a very long time, and that's not picking on your age, sir. It is picking on your experience. For a very long time, and has a great disposition rate, one of the best in the misdemeanor courts. So as every leader, when they come into a new position, in the first 90 days, I'm going to observe. I'm going to see how the things work. I'm not going to go in and make some radical changes that can throw things off. You know, if I change something very quickly and it's the wrong change, it's going to take me twice as long to fix it. So I'm going to observe things. That's what the Army taught me. As a leader, don't go in there and just make changes willy-nilly. You gotta observe and you gotta know what's going on in the court. Number two, I agree with the court's all the judges in the Montgomery County who decided to make specialized courts. There's no indication at all that county court of law will be anything but a criminal case, a criminal court, I'm sorry. So I won't petition for that change, I'll keep it the way it is. So how do you hold feet to the fire for both the prosecution and the defense? You set scheduling orders. When they come in initially, you arraign them, you give them a scheduling order, the state has to announce ready on each time, the defense has to announce ready or explain why they're not ready, and then you set them for trials. You have the trials. So that is going to be the goal in this court, is we're going to have a lot of trials. County Court of Law number 1 is going to try to take over Vince Santini's court for the most trials. That's our goal. And that's what we're going to do, because justice delayed is justice lost, right? So if they're not getting in front of the judge to have their trial, you're going to lose it. You're going to lose witnesses, you're going to lose the momentum that the state may have, momentum that the defense has, so we are going to have trials.
Okay, our third question is about the pandemic. The ongoing pandemic, the pandemic that never ends. So we're going to start with you, Ron. The pandemic has affected the practice of law, let's face it. The Supreme Court has issued 45 emergency orders during the past 2 years of the pandemic, dictating the practice of how courts can operate. These orders went from allowing 0 in-person trials to trials in limited circumstances with permission from the state OCA, to local permission, now leaving it up to the individual court. How will your court operate during this pandemic? Will you have in-person jury trials? Will you have safeguards? And if so, what will those be? To boil it all down, will you work brick and mortar?
So you heard my previous answer, and it carries over to the pandemic. We're going to have trials. We are going to have trials. So the voters of the state of Texas elect judges for a reason. And the reason you all vote for judges is because you want judges to make decisions about their courts. You don't want the Supreme Court making decisions about your local court. Nobody wants that. Think about the decisions that the Supreme Court of the United States has made lately. Do you want them making the decisions of everything you do in life, or do you want to elect officials who you can trust are going to lead? And that's why my first answer is also important. I have proven leadership. I think you can trust me. The United States government trusts me with multi-million-dollar top secret missions. I think you can trust me with the court. We are going to have trials. We're not going to have trials just for the sake of having trials. If a hurricane comes through and Judge Keough says we're not going to meet, I'm going to follow the county judge. But I'm not going to decide that we're not going to have trials because of a pandemic. Now, going forward, there could be things, like I said, the ice age that we had last winter, or we have a hurricane, and that's where we live. So we have to balance the risk, obviously. I'm not going to have a trial at the risk of citizens. But we're going to have trials.
Okay, Brian, the same question. How will your court operate during the pandemic? Will you have in-person jury trials? And will you have safeguards? And if so, what will those be? And will you work brick and mortar?
Yes, we're going to have trials. Now, in my lay opinion, not a virologist or any whatever follows this stuff, I think Omicron is going to be the last gasp here. So I'm hoping we're back to 100% business everywhere very shortly. I think we all know someone who's been sick recently. We feel for them, but I think this is going to be the last gasp. As far as safeguards, we've seen the safeguards put in place and that they've worked. We've been able to have trials for the last several months, if not longer, in several courts. So I don't see any reason that we can't have trials. I do want to make sure I clarify something I said earlier. When I said that specialized docket for DWIs and working with law enforcement and the state as far as getting their witnesses to come to bear. The whole purpose of that is to have trials. So don't get me wrong, we're going to try to churn and burn through the cases as best we can. I don't need to compare myself to John, but Vinny's set a high bar, and that's for sure. Judge Santini set a high bar, and we need to. I apologize for that. We need to.
I'm still Vinny. I'm not afraid.
Yeah. Sorry. When you get to know him as a defense attorney, as a prosecutor, you get a little too familiar sometimes. So sorry, Judge, but we do need to have trials at a high rate, and I think John and I both would echo that we are using the examples of all the judges that are on the bench now that have pushed and pushed and pushed various parties to make sure that we have those trials. If you look at the docketing numbers for the various courts, they do a very good job in a growing county keeping those numbers from getting out of control. And the answer is yes, we're going to have trials.
Okay, next question. In alternating order, Brian, you're first. What do you consider the most significant achievements in your career, and how will those help you to be a good judge?
The most significant achievements I get are, not written down, they're not on a plaque, they're not going to be on a website. I've had more than one client tell me in the middle of a proceeding how happy they were with my service. And I had that recently in a trial that went way better than I expected, but it does happen. So my achievements are my service to my client. I mean, that's what I'm paid for, is to get their case heard, get their facts presented, and sometimes to make sure that the worst doesn't happen, if that's what I'm being hired to prevent. So I don't necessarily need to point to something that somebody said, what a great job, because I get those in my ear. I get them in the referrals I get back to my office. I went from sitting on my current partner's couch a couple months after being licensed to being a partner in his law firm because I was doing that kind of job from the very outset. And again, like I said, that's what I see as my achievements. When somebody says, I'm sending more business your way, and they say that to your face, send you emails if they can't see you, message you on Facebook, and so on. Those are my achievements. When I serve my client to the best of my ability, which is what I am going to bring to this county, is bringing my abilities and serving all of the people. So, there it is.
I didn't know if you're going to repeat the question or not, but if not, no, we don't have to. We don't have to, and we can start the clock now. So the greatest achievement happened when I was 15 years old, when I was saved by Jesus Christ. That was my greatest achievement. My second greatest achievement is the fact that I convinced my wife to marry me. And if you know my wife, you know that is a great achievement. My third greatest achievement is that I raised two kids that both made it to college, one at Ole Miss, one at Texas A&M. So those are my top three achievements. Now my achievement in my professional life. As a police officer, I was awarded the Medal of Valor. I was awarded the Medal of Valor because I went into a burning house and pulled someone from a burning house as a police officer with the assistance of the first responding firefighter. That was a great achievement, and hindsight may have been a little reckless, but it was something that I swore an oath to protect and defend. My next greatest achievement is probably the Bronze Star that I received in Iraq. That was a really, really, really tough deployment. So coming back from that and reuniting with the family, that was difficult, but it's one of my more proud achievements personally. So as an attorney, I guess my greatest achievement is within a year of being licensed, I became a chief of a felony court in just one short year. And I think that was based on my experience as a police officer and based on my experience as being a leader in the Army. And that's why I was able to maneuver through the DA's office so quick. So I think in order, those are probably my greatest achievements that I've got in life.
Okay, General Hafley, bail considerations is the next question. Suppose hypothetically the jail's almost full capacity, whatever that is, 95%, 98%. There's an outbreak in the jail, high COVID infection rate. Does jail capacity and COVID outbreaks affect your bail considerations as a judge? Why or why not? Walk us through your considerations in setting bail, and do you support bail reform? So just kind of an all-encompassing bail considerations question.
Yeah, so that's a lot of bails in one question. So, in all seriousness, most of you don't know in the room how the bail system works in Montgomery County with misdemeanors. So, citizen X is arrested. The next day they see a magistrate. That magistrate is not a county court of law judge. It's a magistrate that hears the initial, and that magistrate sets the bail at whatever they set it. So typically, a county court of law judge, the first time they see somebody, if they don't make bail, is at a jail docket. So at the jail docket, they're appointed an attorney, and that attorney will make a recommendation on what the bail will be. So that is going to be the first time this position, county court of law judge, will make a recommendation on bail. So your question goes back to COVID and COVID considerations. I'm going to stand by the initial magistrate's bail that was set. And why am I going to do that? Because they are hired to set that bail. They have gone through those considerations already. I will listen to what a defendant or accused citizen has to say or what their attorney has to say when it comes to setting bail. But it's not going to be a free release program. If they're in jail and they don't make bail, then they get pushed to the top of the trial docket because they're incarcerated. So to answer your question specifically, the overcrowding in the jail and the amount of bail that is set is not going to be a consideration. Now, with that said, we will move cases a lot quicker at jail docket. And so that's my answer to the question, is that we're not gonna just release people. We're not gonna turn into Harris County. That's not gonna happen here. That's why we have hired magistrates, and that's why we have great district judges and county court of law judges here. We're just not gonna do it. Thanks.
Mr. Cain, I think you know what the question is. It's bail considerations. Same thing. Does a COVID outbreak or jail capacity affect your bail considerations? Why or why not? And help us walk through considerations you would make when setting bail. And also, do you support bail reform or not? Thank you.
So do COVID, or does another COVID outbreak or something like that affect it? Okay. No, not necessarily. I wouldn't see that as a primary factor. I think you start with the allegation of the crime. Obviously, the more serious the allegation, the higher the bond is going to be set, and that needs to be the primary factor for any bond number. Whether or not they can make it is not irrelevant, but it's far down the list. Whether or not there's an outbreak is far down the list. Whether or not other counties are having problems setting bond and setting free people that are violent and committing violent crimes is not even on the radar. So when it comes to special considerations, those are things that we did have a period of time where the jail was more like half full as opposed to all the way full. So we had to make those decisions. I think we all made those decisions, not we, but the county made those decisions as a group to make sure that we could control the outbreak where it was people cloistered together. But that shouldn't be any individual judge's decision shouldn't be any individual judge's primary or even secondary consideration. You need to look at what is being charged and a criminal history when that's available, which is usually available by the time it gets to court. Those two things together are where the bond number should come from. And to sort of answer your question as to bail reform, I haven't seen, in my experience, and as a defense attorney who is always working to get clients out so we can get trials worked on, I haven't seen the need in this county. We do a very good job of keeping the violent people where they need to be and the non-violent people at bond levels that are appropriate.
Let's give these gentlemen a round of applause, please. Thank you all.